Kim nodded slowly. Because that's what worked against the Arctarians and Synovians. A thin smile crossed his face. They expect us to react the same way, to concentrate our forces to prevent being surrounded. But we won't, said Captain June, standing at Kim's side. No, agreed the Admiral, we won't. He tapped his comm unit. All ships, execute battle plan Thermopylae. I repeat, execute Thermopylae. Across the human fleet, commanders acknowledged the order. Unlike the rigid chain of command used by Alliance forces, human captains had been given considerable autonomy. They knew the overall strategy, but could adapt their individual tactics as needed. The first wave of void ships accelerated toward the center of the human formation, the most obvious target. But as they approached, the human vessels scattered in all directions like startled fish. Some powered down completely, drifting lifelessly. Others fired their engines at full burn, racing toward the nebula's edge. "They're running!" exclaimed the Tellurian observer from the Alliance monitoring station. "Their formation is breaking apart." The Medusan observer wasn't so sure. Its skin rippled with colors of uncertainty as it watched the human ship's seemingly chaotic movements. This doesn't match any known retreat pattern. Inside the Void Collective, confusion rippled through the hive consciousness. Its vast intelligence had analyzed countless battles, absorbed the military knowledge of dozens of conquered species. The patterns of warfare were predictable, following logical progressions. But this made no sense. As the collective's ships pursued what appeared to be fleeing human vessels, they spread thin, breaking their tight formation. Some chased obvious targets, the largest human warships, while others moved to cut off escape routes. "They've taken the bait," Admiral Kim said calmly. Phase 2. Now. Throughout the battlefield, the dead human ships suddenly powered up. The vessels that had fled toward the nebula reversed course, and hidden among the debris of a long-ago battle, a dozen smaller craft that had been completely masked from sensors revealed themselves. The trap was sprung. "All ships, weapons free," ordered Kim. "Hit them hard, hit them fast, then relocate. Before they can target you." Human vessels opened fire from all directions. Unlike the precision energy weapons favored by Alliance species, Earth ships launched physical projectiles, massive tungsten rods accelerated to near-light speeds, kinetic, kill vehicles that couldn't be stopped by energy shields. Other ships fired spread patterns of missiles, not aiming for direct hits, but creating clouds of shrapnel that damaged sensitive external sensors on the Void ships. "The Wu-Tang Gambit is working," exclaimed Lieutenant Su, watching as the Void ships struggled to reform their perfect formation. "They're not used to fighting in 3 dimensions. They move like a ground-based army." "Most Alliance species evolved from herd animals," June noted. "They think in terms of fronts and flanks. Humans evolved from ambush predators. We think in terms of traps." On the main viewer, they watched as a group of mining ships sprung another surprise. Instead of weapons, they released thousands of magnetic mines into the path of advancing Void ships. The mines attached themselves to the black hulls, then detonated in sequence, creating localized electromagnetic pulses. "They're slowing down," reported Security Chief Juan from his station. "The EMP charges are having an effect." For almost an hour, the battle continued in this vein. Human ships would strike from unexpected angles, then quickly relocate before the collective could bring its superior firepower to bear. The nebula itself became a weapon, with human vessels darting in and out of the gas clouds, using the interference to mask their movements. It wasn't a conventional battle. It was guerrilla warfare on a cosmic scale. In the Alliance observation post, the watching representatives were stunned. "They're winning?" the Tellurian said, his crystalline form vibrating with disbelief. "Not winning," corrected the Medusan. "Surviving, which is itself miraculous." Back on the Indomitable, the bridge crew worked with fierce determination. Despite their early successes, the reality of their situation was becoming clear. The Void Collective was adapting, learning from each encounter. Its ships were beginning to predict the humans' unconventional tactics. "They're targeting our engine signatures now," reported Major Han, "compensating for our evasive patterns." Admiral Kim nodded grimly. "They learn fast. Time for something they haven't seen before." He opened a channel to a specific group of ships. Task Force Pyongyang, execute the solar reflector strategy. At the edge of the battlefield, 5 human ships that had been holding position suddenly unfurled enormous reflective sails, technology designed for deep space exploration using solar wind. As the sails deployed, they caught the light from Barnard's star and focused it like giant mirrors, directing intense beams of concentrated starlight at key void vessels. The effect was stunning. The black hulls, designed to absorb energy weapons, couldn't handle the raw thermal energy of a focused star. Several ships began to glow red-hot, their surfaces bubbling and warping. "It's working!" shouted Lieutenant Sue, her professional demeanor briefly cracking to reveal pure joy. But the victory was short-lived. As if sharing a single thought, the remaining void ships adjusted their approach. They interposed themselves between the reflectors and their damaged comrades, sacrificing themselves to protect the whole, just as they had seen humans do. "They're learning from us," Kim realized aloud, "adapting our own tactics." As if to confirm his assessment, a group of void ships suddenly broke from their predictable patterns and executed a perfect flanking maneuver, cutting off a squadron of human defenders. Before they could react, 3 Earth vessels were caught in devastating crossfire and destroyed. "Cooper Squadron is gone," reported Communications Officer Min quietly. "No survivors." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. These were the first human casualties of the battle, 87 lives snuffed out in an instant. But there was no time to mourn. "They're pushing toward the center now," reported Major Han, "consolidating their forces." Admiral Kim studied the tactical display, his expression grim but determined. "They think they've figured us out. Time to show them how wrong they are." He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, fall back to secondary positions. Prepare to execute the Kang maneuver." The human fleet regrouped. Captain June moved to stand beside the Admiral. "We've held them for almost 3 hours," he said quietly. "That's 3 hours more than anyone thought possible." Kim nodded slowly. "But this is just the beginning. They're testing us, learning our limits." He looked around at his bridge crew, humans, from every corner of Earth, now united against an enemy that threatened not just humanity, but all life in the galaxy. "The real fight is still ahead," he continued. "But we've drawn first blood. We've shown them that humans don't follow the rules of warfare they've come to expect." His voice hardened with determination. "And by the time this battle is over, they'll learn what every enemy of humanity has learned throughout our bloody history." "What's that, sir?" asked Lieutenant Sue. Admiral Kim's eyes gleamed with fierce pride. "That cornered animals fight the hardest, and humanity has been fighting its way out of corners since we first picked up a rock and called it a weapon." Across the comm channel, they could hear the human crews on other ships, cheering, singing battle songs, some even laughing in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a sound that no alien race in the galaxy could quite understand. The sound of humans finding joy in the struggle, even when outmatched and facing death. For the first time since the Void Collective emerged from deep space, its inexorable advance had stalled. The impossible had happened. Humans had held the line. All hope was lost, but humans held the line. 3 weeks into the battle, the bridge of the Indomitable was barely recognizable. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim red glow. Repair crews had patched hull breaches with whatever materials they could find. The smell of burned circuitry and sweat hung in the air. Admiral Kim moved carefully through the damaged ship, checking on his crew. His uniform was stained and torn, his face gaunt from too little sleep, but his eyes remained sharp, focused, taking in every detail. "Status report," he asked, as he reached the command center. Major Han looked up from her console. Her arm was in a makeshift sling, her face streaked with engine grease. "Not good, sir. We're down to 28 combat-capable ships. Life support is failing on another 5. That last attack took out our starboard weapons array." As the humans filed out to prepare their desperate defense, Counselor Lee approached Admiral Kim. Her eyes were filled with concern, but her voice was steady. "All hope seems lost," she said quietly. "The mightiest warriors in the galaxy couldn't stop this enemy." Admiral Kim looked at her, determination etched into every line of his face. Then it's a good thing humans specialize in impossible situations, he replied. We will hold the line, not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we don't know how to give up. All hope was lost, but humans held the line. They think we're primitive, Captain June told his assembled officers aboard the flagship Indomitable. The ship's briefing room was packed with humanity's best and brightest, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. Maybe we are, compared to their quantum computers and antimatter engines, but sometimes the old ways work best. Outside the viewports, Earth's hastily assembled defense fleet was preparing to jump to Barnard's Gate. Ships that had never been designed to fly together were now forming into battle groups, everything from heavy military cruisers to retrofitted mining vessels. Humanity was throwing everything they had into this fight. Admiral Kim wants us ready to depart in 6 hours, June continued, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. So I need ideas, creative ones. Major Han stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. A former history professor before joining the military, she'd spent her career studying Earth's conflicts. The Void Collective has been winning because they follow patterns, she said, tapping commands into the central display. They expect their enemies to fight according to galactic doctrine, standard formations, predictable responses, but we've never fought that way. The display lit up with battle maps from Earth's history, ancient conflicts from Troy to Thermopylae, medieval clashes, and modern warfare from every continent. Look at how we've adapted over centuries, Han continued, eyes bright with intensity. Guerrilla tactics against superior forces, feigned retreats to lure enemies into traps, asymmetric warfare when outgunned. Lieutenant Bay, the youngest officer in the room, raised his hand. The Alliance species have been at peace for so long. They've forgotten what real war looks like. They fight like it's a chess match. We fight like our survival depends on it, because it always has. Around the room, heads nodded. For all their technological disadvantages, humans brought something unique to this fight. Thousands of years of experience killing each other. It wasn't something to be proud of, but it might just save the galaxy. We'll use tactics from the Korean War, Vietnam, and the Middle East conflicts, Major Han suggested, pulling up more historical data, hit-and-run attacks, trap their superior forces in environments that neutralize their advantages, make them fight on our terms. Captain June studied the plans forming on the display. They'll expect us to protect our capital ships at all costs. What if we don't? What if we use them as bait instead? A slow smile spread across Major Han's face. Now you're thinking like a human. For the next 5 hours, they worked tirelessly, crafting a defensive strategy unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. When Admiral Kim arrived to review their plans, even he seemed surprised by their audacity. This is either brilliant or suicidal, he muttered, studying the final battle plan. Maybe both. With respect, sir, Major Han replied. That's humanity. In a nutshell. 3 days later, the human fleet arrived at Barnard's Gate, a narrow corridor of stable space between two volatile nebulae. Any ship attempting to reach the Alliance core worlds had to pass through this choke point. It was the perfect place for a last stand. Alliance representatives had arrived ahead of them, establishing observation posts at a safe distance. They watched with a mixture of pity and respect as the human ships took up their positions. Such primitive vessels, remarked the Tellurian observer, his crystalline form glittering in the light of the nebulae. Their strongest weapons wouldn't even penetrate our civilian shields, yet they come anyway, responded his Medusan colleague. Knowing what happened to the Arctarians and Synovians, knowing they face certain destruction. Fascinating species, the Tellurian admitted, admirable in their way. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kim watched his fleet deploy. Unlike the perfect formations favored by Alliance species, the human ships arranged themselves in seemingly chaotic patterns, hiding smaller vessels in the sensor shadows of larger ones, creating false signatures to confuse enemy targeting systems. Updates from our forward scouts? Kim asked. The Void Collective will arrive within 12 hours, reported Communications Officer Min, her voice steady despite the gravity of their situation. Their fleet is massive, sir. Bigger than what hit the Arctarians. Kim nodded grimly. They're learning to expect resistance. Good. That means they can be surprised. He turned to Captain June. Are the special weapons packages deployed? June nodded. Mining charges placed throughout the nebula, improvised EMP devices ready. And the solar reflectors are in position, though I still think that's our craziest idea. Sometimes crazy works, Kim replied with the ghost of a smile. The Alliance species overthink everything. They've evolved beyond instinct, but that's all we are, clever apes with a talent for survival. As the human fleet completed its preparations, a message arrived from Earth. The planet's unified government had drafted a simple statement for the defenders. Whatever happens at Barnard's Gate, humanity stands with you. You carry our hopes, our dreams, and our stubborn refusal to surrender. Hold the line. Admiral Kim read it aloud to his bridge crew. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Security Chief Juan broke the silence. My grandfather fought in the mountains against overwhelming odds, he said quietly. His unit was supposed to last 2 days. They held for 2 weeks. When they asked how they did it, he just said, "We didn't know we were supposed to lose." A pie. Rumble of agreement passed through the bridge. These humans, facing an enemy that had crushed civilizations thousands of years more advanced than Earth, shared a simple, powerful conviction. They would find a way. As the hours counted down, the human fleet prepared for battle in ways that bewildered their Alliance observers. Some ships powered down completely, playing dead. Others moved into the fringes of the nebulae, despite the danger. Smaller vessels clustered together to mimic the signatures of larger warships. "What are they doing?" asked the Tellurian observer, genuinely puzzled. The Medusan skin rippled with colors of uncertainty. "I believe the humans call it deception." Then, as the final preparations were made, something unexpected happened. Across the human fleet, crews began to sing, ancient battle hymns, patriotic songs, even sports chants, the voices of thousands, united in defiance. The Alliance observers listened in amazement. Here, facing certain death, these strange creatures were raising their voices in song. "I do not understand," confessed the Tellurian. The Medusan watched the human fleet, its skin now showing hints of gold, the color of hope. "Perhaps," it said, softly, "that is why they might succeed where we failed." All hope was lost, but humans held the line. They came like a storm front, a wall of darkness blotting out the stars. The Void Collective arrived at Barnard's Gate in overwhelming numbers, their ships moving in perfect unison, like a single organism rather than a fleet. Each vessel was smooth and black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, with no visible weapons or propulsion systems. They simply moved, as if space itself was bending to their will. "God Almighty," whispered Lieutenant Sue from her tactical station on the Indomitable's bridge. The young officer's hands hovered over her controls, steady despite the terror that such a sight would instill in anyone. Admiral Kim stood at the center of the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of battle displays. He showed no fear, only intense concentration as he studied the enemy's approach. "They're using a pincer movement," observed Sue after a moment. "Just like we predicted. They're splitting their forces to envelope us from 3 vectors. The human fleet had been whittled down day by day. For every clever tactic they deployed, the Void Collective eventually found a counter. For every weakness they exploited in the enemy, the Collective adapted and sealed the vulnerability. It had become a war of attrition, and that was a war humans couldn't win against an enemy with seemingly limitless resources. "What about the civilian evacuations?" Kim asked, lowering himself carefully into his command chair. His side ached where a piece of shrapnel had caught him during a particularly close attack. "Progress is good, sir," replied Communications Officer. Then her workstation sparked occasionally, the circuits damaged but still functioning. "The Alliance reports that 80% of the core world's populations have been moved to safety. They're ahead of schedule thanks to the time we've bought them." Kim nodded, allowing himself a small moment of satisfaction. If nothing else, their sacrifice was saving billions of lives. "And reinforcements?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Min's expression told him everything. "Alliance reinforcements are still days away, sir. They've gathered a substantial force, but they're being cautious. The loss of the Arctarian and Synovian fleets left them hesitant. Scared, corrected Security Chief Juan bluntly from his station. They're scared. Can't blame them, really. The message arrived during Earth's delegation meeting with the Galactic Alliance Council on their massive orbital station. The holographic displays flickered as Ambassador Park's face drained of color. He read the transmission twice, his hands trembling slightly before looking up at the assembled representatives of humanity. The Arctarians have fallen, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. Their entire defense fleet were gone, just like that. Admiral Kim, a weathered veteran with piercing eyes and a scar running from his left temple to his jaw, slammed, his fist on the polished table. The sound echoed through the chamber, causing several alien delegates to flinch. That's impossible, he growled. The Arctarians had the most advanced battleships in 3 sectors. Their quantum shields alone should have held for weeks. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Void Collective, a hive-mind entity that had emerged from the darkness between galaxies 6 months ago, was consuming entire star systems faster than anyone had predicted. It moved like a shadow across the stars, leaving nothing but dead worlds in its wake. "Show me the battle footage," Admiral Kim demanded. The central display lit up with the final moments transmitted from Arctarian space. Massive crystalline ships, each the size of a small moon, swarmed around the Arctarian homeworld. They moved with eerie coordination, adapting instantly whenever the Arctarians changed tactics. One by one, the legendary Arctarian dreadnoughts, ships that had stood undefeated for centuries, winked out of existence. They didn't even have time to evacuate their civilian population, said Science Officer Yoon, her voice breaking. She had studied on Arctaria for 3 years. 2 billion souls are gone. Ambassador Park turned to the alien representatives who had joined the emergency session. What about the Synovians? Weren't they coordinating a counter-offensive? A tall, willowy alien with iridescent skin, the Medusan ambassador stepped forward. The Synovians fell yesterday. Their hive minds, for all their tactical genius, were somehow turned against them. The Void Collective. It learns. It adapts. It absorbs. Murmurs of dread rippled through the room. The Synovians were celebrated across the galaxy for their unmatched tactical intelligence. If they couldn't outthink this enemy, the collective has breached the outer defensive line at Alpha Centauri, reported Security Chief Juan, looking up from his datapad with wide eyes. At their current speed, they'll reach the Alliance core worlds in less than 2 weeks. The Medusan ambassador's skin pulsed with dark colors of distress. The evacuation of civilian populations has begun, but we need time. Without a defensive position to hold the collective back. What about the choke point at Barnard's Gate? Admiral Kim asked, studying the strategic map hovering above the table. If we could slow them there even for a few days. All our major combat fleets have been committed and destroyed, the Medusan replied. There is nothing left to hold Barnard's Gate. Admiral Kim exchanged looks with the other human officers. A silent understanding passed between them. Earth will hold the line, he said firmly. The alien representatives turned to stare at the humans. Their expressions, even on faces so different from humanity's, clearly showed a mix of pity and disbelief. Your species is brave, Admiral, said the Medusan delicately, but your technology is centuries behind the Arctarians, millennia behind. The Synovians. Your ships would be annihilated in moments. Maybe so, Admiral Kim replied, but we're all you've got left. Ambassador Park stepped forward. Earth only joined the Alliance 30 years ago. We're newcomers. Most Alliance members still consider us primitive, but humanity has something the Void Collective hasn't encountered yet. And what is that? Asked the Medusan skeptically. 10,000 years of fighting each other, Captain June answered from where he stood at the Admiral's side. We know war in ways peaceful species never could. The room fell silent as the enormity of what the humans were proposing sank in. Earth's military forces, considered quaint and outdated by most Alliance species, volunteering for what amounted to a suicide mission to buy time for civilian evacuations. I'll need every combat-ready vessel we have, Admiral Kim said, turning to his staff. And I want our top military historians on my command ship, Sun Tzu to Schwarzkopf. I want every strategy humans have ever developed. The Medusan ambassadors' skin rippled with colors of surprise, then respect. I will inform the council. Earth's sacrifice will not be forgotten. Admiral Kim's expression hardened. We're not planning on sacrificing anything. We're planning on winning. Kim didn't disagree. Fear was a reasonable response to what they were facing. The Void Collective had sent even more ships to Barnard's Gate once they realized the humans were actually holding the line. The enemy now outnumbered them 50-1. The Collective is preparing for another push, reported Lieutenant Sue, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Once bright and eager, she now moved with the measured care of someone much older, someone who had seen too much. Their attack patterns have become more sophisticated. They've adapted to nearly all our evasive maneuvers. They're learning, Kim said quietly, absorbing our tactics, just as they absorbed the Arctarians' technology and the Synovians' strategy. Captain June joined him, offering a cup of something that smelled vaguely like coffee. They're still not creative, though. They can copy what they see, but they can't innovate like we can. Kim accepted the drink gratefully. True, but at some point numbers overwhelm creativity. He took a sip and grimaced. Definitely not coffee, but it had caffeine, and that was all that mattered now. Sir, Min called out suddenly, her voice tight. Incoming transmission from Earth. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Earth's defense minister. She looked as tired as Kim felt. Admiral, I won't waste time with pleasantries, she said without preamble. You've done the impossible. You've held Barnard's Gate for 3 weeks when no one thought you'd last 3 hours. But our analysts believe the Collective is massing for a final overwhelming assault. Kim nodded. We've detected their movements. It's coming soon. The Alliance needs another 48 hours to complete the evacuation of the most vulnerable worlds, the minister continued. After that, their combined fleet will jump to your position. 48 hours, Kim repeated. He looked around at his bridge crew, saw the same realization in their eyes. They all knew what that meant. We'll hold, he said simply. The minister's expression softened just slightly. Admiral, there would be no dishonor in a strategic withdrawal. You've done more than anyone could have asked. Kim straightened in his chair, ignoring the pain in his side. Earth accepted membership in this alliance. We gave our word that we would stand with them. I don't intend to break that promise now. After the transmission ended, silence fell over the bridge. Each person present was confronting the reality of their situation. Human forces were reduced to barely 30% of their original strength. The Void Collective had adapted to many of their tactics. Alliance reinforcements were still days away. Orders, sir, asked Captain June quietly. Kim was silent for a long moment, thinking. Then he opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Admiral Kim to all ships. I won't lie to you. The situation is grim. The enemy is preparing for what they believe will be their final push. They think we're beaten. They think we're done. He paused, looking around at his bridge crew. Humans from different countries, different backgrounds, now united in this desperate stand. But there's something this enemy doesn't understand about humanity. Throughout our history, we have faced extinction many times, from nature, from each other, from our own foolishness. Each time we survived, not because we were stronger or faster or smarter than whatever threatened us, but because we refused to accept defeat. Around the fleet, exhausted crews paused in their repairs to listen. The Alliance needs 48 more hours. I intend to give them those hours. Kim's voice hardened. We choose to die on our feet rather than live on our knees. We hold this line, not just for Earth, but for every world that stands behind us. He closed the channel and turned to his officers. It's time for our final gambit. Major Han's eyes widened. Sir, the Sung Protocol? The Alliance specifically prohibited. The Alliance isn't here, Kim interrupted. We are, and we're out of conventional options. From the beginning of the conflict, humans had been fighting with self-imposed limitations. The Alliance had strict rules about weapons of mass destruction, rules Earth had agreed to when joining. But they had brought such weapons anyway, keeping them in reserve as an absolute last resort. With nothing left to lose, they would now deploy experimental technologies deemed too unstable and dangerous by other species. Antimatter catalysts that could tear holes in space itself, artificial microsingularities, quantum disruptors that could unravel the very fabric of reality. Distribute the access codes to all remaining ships, Kim ordered. Each commander is authorized to deploy Special Weapons Package Alpha at their discretion. As his orders were relayed, Lieutenant Su's console lit up with warnings. "Sir, the Void Collective is moving. This is it, their final push." On the main viewer, the blackness of space seemed to deepen as hundreds of Void ships began to advance. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of destruction bearing down on the battered human fleet. "All ships, battle stations," Kim ordered calmly. "Remember your training, remember Earth, remember why we fight." As klaxons sounded throughout the fleet, Lieutenant Su looked up from her station. "Sir, it's been an honor." Kim nodded, his expression solemn but determined. "The honor has been mine. Now let's show this enemy why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The human fleet, what remained of it, moved to meet the overwhelming force bearing down on them. Unlike their earlier formations, they now arranged themselves in a simple line, reminiscent of ancient naval battles on Earth's oceans. Ship by ship, they would stand against the tide. In the Alliance observation post, the watching representatives were stunned by the humans' final stand. "They cannot hope to survive," whispered the Tellurian observer. The Medusan's skin had gone pale with emotion. "No, but they stand anyway." As the distance closed between the opposing forces, Admiral Kim gave one final order across all frequencies, knowing the Void Collective would hear it too. "Deploy the Sung Protocol. Let's show them what humanity does when pushed to the breaking point." All hope was lost, but humans held the line. The void between stars erupted in light. Where there had been darkness, now colors no human eye was meant to see, tore across the fabric of space. The Sung Protocol, humanity's desperate final gambit, had been activated. 23 ships, each carrying a single experimental weapon, targeted the heart of the Void Collective's formation. From the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kim watched as reality itself seemed to buckle. The antimatter catalysts created expanding spheres of pure annihilation. The microsingularities pulled Void ships into their crushing embrace. The quantum disruptors unraveled molecular bonds, turning solid matter into clouds of disconnected atoms. "God help us," whispered Captain June beside him. "What have we done?" The weapons had been theoretical until now, too dangerous to test, too unstable to control. The Alliance had banned their development centuries ago, but humans, always preparing for the worst, had created them anyway. The effect on the battlefield was catastrophic. Where the Void Collective had moved as one perfect organism, now chaos reigned. Ships collided with each other, trying to escape the expanding destruction. Others fired blindly, their coordinated attack patterns disintegrating. Into panic. "It's working," Lieutenant Su reported, her voice tinged with awe and horror. "Their formation is breaking apart. The hive connection between their ships is disrupted." "But at what cost?" Kim murmured, watching as spatial distortions spread beyond their intended targets. Several human vessels, caught too close to the weapons they'd deployed, were destroyed by the very forces they'd unleashed. For 6 hours the battle raged in this new, terrible phase. The human fleet, now reduced to a handful of functioning ships, fought with desperate courage. They used the chaos they'd created, darting between reality distortions, to strike at confused enemy vessels. The Void Collective, for the first time since it emerged from deep space, seemed uncertain. Its perfect coordination faltered. Its overwhelming numerical advantage became a hindrance as ships struggled to maneuver in the spatial nightmare humans had created. Then, just as the last human weapons were exhausted, just as Admiral Kim was preparing for a final suicidal charge, something unexpected happened. "Sir," Communications Officer Min's voice cut through the smoke-filled bridge. "I'm detecting new energy signatures at the edge of the system, hundreds of them." The main viewer flickered to life, showing a massive fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Ships of every description, the combined might of the Galactic Alliance, had arrived. They came, Kim said softly, disbelief in his voice. They actually came. Commander Tay's voice broke through the static on the comm system. His ship, the Dauntless, had been on the far edge of the battlefield. Admiral, we held the line. We actually held. Across what remained of the human fleet, exhausted crews watched in stunned silence as Alliance ships poured into the system. The Medusan dreadnoughts, with their organic-looking hulls, the crystalline vessels of the Tellurians, the massive carrier ships of the Proxima Collective, species that had been enemies for millennia now fought side by side, united by humanities. Example: Alliance fleet to human defenders, came a transmission. We stand with Earth, your position is relieved. Fresh Alliance ships engage the disorganized Void Collective. What had been a desperate last stand became a turning point. The Alliance forces, emboldened by humanity's impossible resistance, pressed their advantage. The Void Collective, its hive mind connections still disrupted by human weapons, began to retreat. For the first time since it had appeared, the seemingly unstoppable enemy was running away. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kim allowed himself to sink back into his chair. 3 weeks of constant battle, of watching friends die, of pushing himself beyond human limits, it all caught up with him at once. "We did it," he said quietly. "We actually did it." "Not without cost," Captain June replied, looking at the casualty reports streaming in. Of the 200 ships that had begun this battle, only 23 remained operational. Thousands of lives had been lost. "No," Kim agreed, his voice heavy with the weight of command, "never without cost." 2 weeks later, Kim stood before the Galactic Alliance Council. His dress uniform hung loose on his frame. He'd lost weight during the battle that no one was calling the miracle at Barnard's Gate. The council chamber was silent as he finished his report. Representatives from 100 species looked down at this human, this member of a species they had once considered primitive, with new respect. "The Alliance owes Earth a debt that can never be repaid," said the Medusan High Counselor, its skin shimmering with colors of gratitude and admiration. "You held when all others fell. You stood against the darkness when hope seemed lost. We did what had to be done," Kim replied simply, "and in doing so, taught us all something we had forgotten," the Tellurian representative added. The Void Collective believed it understood warfare, because it had absorbed the knowledge of so many advanced species, but it had never encountered humans before. In the aftermath of the battle, the surviving humans had worked with Alliance scientists to establish a permanent defensive perimeter named Humanity's Line. Using principles developed during the battle, they created a network of sensors and automated defenses that would prevent the Void Collective from threatening the core worlds again. More importantly, the Alliance had reorganized its military doctrine around human strategies. The rigid, predictable tactics that had failed against the Collective were replaced with the adaptability and creativity that humans had displayed at Barnard's Gate. "The Void Collective has withdrawn to the outer reaches," reported the Alliance. Military Commander: "They're regrouping, but our intelligence suggests they're hesitant now. The assimilation of human battle tactics has introduced something new to their hive mind." "What's that?" asked Kim. "Uncertainty," the commander replied. "Perhaps even fear." After the council session, Admiral Kim wandered the memorial garden that had been planted to honor those who died at Barnard's Gate. Trees from 100 worlds grew together here, symbols of the new unity forged in that desperate battle. The Sea War. Medusan ambassador approached quietly, its movements careful as if worried about disturbing Kim's thoughts. "Our xenopsychologists have been studying the communication fragments we captured from the Void Collective," it said. "We've managed to translate one particular message that was sent to their central consciousness as they retreated. I thought you might wish to see it." It handed Kim a datapad. The message was simple but profound. "Avoid the third planet of the yellow star. The creatures there do not know how to surrender." Kim felt a sad smile tug at his lips. So many had died to earn that reputation. "Was it worth it?" the Medusan asked softly. "Such sacrifice." Kim looked up at the stars visible through the garden dome. Somewhere out there, the evacuated populations were returning to their homes. Children who would have been consumed by the void were playing in sunlight. Civilizations that would have been erased were continuing their ancient stories. "Ask me again in 100 years," he replied, "when those we saved have lived full lives, when the Alliance rebuilds what was damaged, when the memory of those we lost has been honored by the peace they died to protect." He ran his fingers over the names engraved on the memorial stone beside him, the honor roll of ships and crews, lost in the battle. "But I think they would say yes," he added quietly. "This is what humans do. We hold the line not just for ourselves, but for everyone standing behind us." As evening fell, lights came on throughout the garden, one for each life lost in the battle. Thousands of tiny flames defying the darkness, just as a small, supposedly primitive fleet had defied an unstoppable enemy, just as hope had persisted when all seemed lost. The final intelligence report lay open on the bench beside Admiral Kim. It contained the most recent assessment of the Void Collective's activities and ended with a simple conclusion: the enemy continues to avoid all contact with human vessels. Analysis suggests they now classify Earth and its colonies as high-threat avoid engagement. The psychological impact of their defeat at Barnard's Gate appears to have fundamentally altered their expansion strategy. Kim looked up at the stars once more. The line had held. Against all odds, against an enemy that had crushed far more advanced civilizations, humans had stood firm, not because they were stronger or more technologically advanced, but because of something woven into their very nature, a stubborn refusal to accept defeat, a willingness to sacrifice for others, and a creative adaptability born from thousands of years of surviving against the odds. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about its newest members. When all hope seems lost, humans hold the line.